Thursday, February 16th. And MJ, I'm going to go a little bit out of order because we've got obviously guests who are now tuckered out, although we don't ordinarily encourage our speakers to bring beds to public hearings, but we made an exception today. So Christine Dorchek, if you'd like to go first for us there. So you can feel free to leave anytime thereafter, although, like I said, your guest is getting comfortable as well. And please introduce her as well. Christine Dorchek from Grade 2K USA. And just hit the button there in front of you near the microphone. Yep, there you go.
Oh, thank you. Oh, good afternoon. I am so honored to be before this wonderful committee today, talking about my favorite subject, which is greyhounds. Co-Chair Baroni, Co-Chair D'Agostino, Vice Chair Fonfara, Vice Chair Brown, and members. My name is Christine Dorchek, and I'm here today with my greyhound, Gina. I am the president and general counsel of Greyhound Protection Group, Grade 2K USA Worldwide. And I really want to thank you for being here to talk about this issue, which is so dear to my heart. And thank you for hearing the testimony from myself and others today in support of House Bill 6615. This is a humane and timely measure that repeals the statutes authorizing live dog racing in Connecticut, and it allows the law to catch up with reality in the state. Commercial greyhound racing was first introduced here very late in 1976. This was decades after greyhound racing was authorized around the country. And unfortunately for Connecticut, it was just at that moment that the industry began the free fall and downward spiral that it has been experiencing ever since. In fact, since 2001, 46 tracks have closed and only 2 remain nationwide. So although live racing did end here in 2005, there's a problem, and this bill will solve that problem. Under current law, owning and operating a dog track is perfectly legal and permissible. By contrast, in 42 other states, dog racing is illegal and prohibited. So we'd like to see Connecticut join those other states in saying no to dog racing. In fact, Connecticut really is an outlier. It's one of only 8 states where dog racing is still legal. States like Tennessee have already banned dog racing years ago, but somehow or another, the law is still on the books here in Connecticut. Now, because the industry is quickly dissolving in other states, Connecticut has become a magnet for greyhound racing, and it is seen as an open door for the return of the industry. That's what this bill will prevent. The threat of dog racing's resurgence is real, and that's why a corrective change in the law is needed. And this will also help avoid any unintended consequences that could result should dog racing return. I'd like to speak just for a moment about the humane issues about greyhound racing, about these dogs. They're so gentle. As any of you have met my dear Gina today, if you can imagine, she was used for racing over 200 times in Florida. This little fragile dog was stuffed into a box. The bell went off and she chased after a lure. Thank goodness she didn't suffer any serious injuries, but injuries are one of the main problems with dog racing. The humane issues that face greyhounds used in racing are well known. These dogs are subject to crude practices, including extreme confinement, drugging, diets based on diseased meat. It actually has a name in the industry, 4D meat. And of course, infamous live lure training. Live lure training, which is also called jacking or blooding, occurs when young greyhounds are allowed to chase, maul, and kill small animals. These animals tend to be jackrabbits, so another name for live lure training is jacking. Yet another term for it is blooding. That's because the idea is to blood the greyhound in some hopes of making him a more aggressive racer. So all this obscenity aside, this extreme cruelty aside, by any standard, greyhound racing is cruel and inhumane and causes suffering to the animals involved. Like dog fighting, it should not be allowed or tolerated under the law. Thankfully, House Bill 6615 looks to address this. So when you pass this bill, and I hope you will, it will ensure that dog racing cruelty never finds a home in Connecticut again. You can join the 42 other states that have already said no to the disreputable and outdated form of gambling, which is great. I'd like to conclude by thanking you for your time and thanking Chair D'Agostino for his incredible support of this effort to finally give greyhounds the second chance they deserve here in Connecticut. I have submitted written testimony, but I'd also welcome any questions.
Thank you, Christine. While you're up, before other members ask questions, could you just give a little plug for if members are interested and the public's interested, having met the dogs today, the rescue network, since there are still 2 tracks in the US and there's also the shutting down of the Florida tracks, a plug about the adoption networks that are available where they'll take these dogs who, as I was telling members who may not know, when they come out of the track, they don't even know how to be dogs. They don't know how to go up and down stairs. They don't know any of the behavior you'd normally know about dogs. So just describe a little bit about the adoption process that's available for folks if they're interested at all in greyhounds.
Yes, while in the industry, what people don't realize perhaps is that these dogs don't live at homes. Here in the United States, there are kennel compounds associated with each track, sometimes on site, sometimes a little distance away. The dogs are kept in warehouses in stacked metal cages. And the girls are usually on top and the boys in the bottom because it's thought that girls can jump higher. But they live in these cages for 20 to 23 hours a day. So when they come out of racing, they really need to be socialized. Some dogs weather the storm a bit better than others. I've had some greyhounds who were extremely skittish. I would put Gina kind of in the middle category. And then I've had some that were just fine. So it really does depend on the dog. So in terms of adoption, really, everything seems to be going online now. And the easiest way to adopt a greyhound is to go to petfinder.org or rescue me, petfinder.com or rescueme.org. And then you will see any available dog from any group in your area, and you can do it by geography. And I've actually helped people adopt in as few as 11 days. They've gotten a greyhound home. So that's really the happiest part of my job, giving those greyhounds homes again.
Thank you. Questions from committee members? Senator.
Thank you very much, Chairman D'Agostino. Great to see you. Dog's extremely well behaved, and I'm allergic to dogs, but that doesn't bias my opinion. I guess my question is this symbolic? I mean, I'm not aware of any active dog tracks in Connecticut. And I think you had indicated in your testimony that the last one was open in 2005. So that's the first part. And the second part is, I do have an off-track betting parlor up in Windsor Locks near the airport. And does this affect that facility's ability to access dog tracks that may be operating in other parts of the country, if not other parts of the world? So 2 parts.
Thank you so much for your question. If I may proceed. Yes, thank you. This bill is very specifically tailored and addresses live racing only. So live racing was illegal until it was authorized in 1976. So this bill just goes into current law and repeals the language authorizing live racing. It doesn't touch on simulcast wagering, internet wagering. That is all a separate matter under the law and is not touched by the language here. And your other question was, oh yes, this is important because the industry is looking for new ground, and there are only 8 states left where the law will allow dog tracks to continue and operate. And this is unfortunately one of them. Almost all of the southern states have banned dog racing. Florida voters just went to the ballot in 2018 and voted by 69% to close down 12 tracks. Thousands of dogs found homes. My dog Gina is from one of those closed tracks. So this is really close to home for me. And I would just never want to see the humane nightmare of dog raising ever return to Connecticut again. And that's why this bill is so important.
Okay, so it's sort of head him off at the pass before it gets a foothold here, before it gets a paw hold here. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Other questions from committee members? All right. Thank you very much, Christina. Thank you, Gina. You're welcome to stick around, but if Gina needs to take a walk, she's free to do that too. So thank you. And I didn't introduce the other. There you go. There she is. Who's the other one we have? Tora. Tora's 4. She's from West Virginia. Thank you both for being here. MJ, I'll turn it back over to you, please.
Our next person up, I have Taylor Biniars. They should be in person. Yes.
Co-chairs Senator Maroney, Representative D'Agostino, Vice Chair Senator Fonfara, Representative Brown, and Ranking Members Senator Ciccarella and Representative Rutigliano. My name is Taylor Biniars. I am from Ellington, Connecticut, and I am testifying today in support of House Bill 6615, an act concerning greyhound racing. Greyhound racing is cruel and is illegal in 42 states as of now. I'd like Connecticut to join them. I know to some that this bill may not make sense to concentrate on, as both greyhound racing facilities have been closed in the state since 2005, but we need to make sure that this terrible practice doesn't ever find its way back in our state. With every state that prohibits it, it puts pressure on the states that still allow it and to the states that still to this day practice it. I do not own a greyhound, though they are my favorite breed of dog, as I do not have the adequate space where I live to own one, so it would not be fair to them. They need space to live, as all animals do, but also need the space to run. And most of the time when they are not racing, they are living in cages or cramped kennels up to 23 hours a day. On the track, they frequently experience injuries like a broken neck, spinal injuries, and broken legs. Due to poor living conditions, they often have ticks, fleas, or even parasites. These facts are from 2008 to 2015, so know that the real numbers are higher. There have been over 11,700 injuries in greyhound racing. More than 3,000 dogs have had severe injuries, such as the ones mentioned above, but also including broken backs and crushed skulls. In just those 7 years, there have been over 900 greyhound deaths. When we think of dogs, we think of taking them for walks, playing with them, and them growing up with children. I was lucky as a child and grew up with 3 dogs that had such a great life. Our family often jokes about how animals are treated better than the people, that horses and dogs are higher up on the hierarchy scale than kids and spouses. I was often jokingly taught the phrase, have dogs, not kids. These dogs are not treated the way we imagine when we think of puppies and dogs being raised and loved. These dogs are not loved at all. They are used to make money and cared for in the bare minimum way to increase profits. The FBI has identified cruelty as animals as a sign of psychopathy. So why is this even a question? I understand that this is not currently an issue in Connecticut, but that doesn't mean we even give it a small chance to become one again. And this is the time to pass this bill, regardless of it being a pressing issue in our state. We need to be a part of this movement that puts a stop to such cruel treatment of greyhounds. I'm actually against any forms of entertainment using animals not limited to dog racing. Even being raised in a family where you ride before you walk, I think horse racing is also cruel, which, as you can imagine, would create some interesting dinner conversations with my family. But greyhound racing is extremely cruel in particular and needs to be banned now. Make Connecticut the next state to put a stop to it. Please support House Bill 6615. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from committee members? Senator, please.
I also have a question, but I want to thank you for coming down to Hartford to testify. During redistricting, I did get a portion of Ellington, your town. I hate to say it, but I don't know if you're within my district or not, but
I am
I
not.
consider, pardon?
I'm not. I'm in Senator Onawar's district.
But you know, I sort of feel like I represent the whole town. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Quite other questions or comments from committee members? Thank you very much. Appreciate your testimony.
Up next online, we have Pat Shea Reams. They are joining right now. Pat, are you there? You have the camera. Now we need the microphone.
I apologize. It made me reboot after you went to remote. Chairman D'Agostino and Maroney and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak today in our support for House Bill 6613. My name is Pat Shea Reams, and I'm Executive Director of the Connecticut Alarm and System Integrators Association, the singular trade association in the state representing the licensed low voltage industry. Our members work to protect lives and property through the responsible use of electronic security, fire, and integrated alarm systems. CASIA strongly supports HB 6613 since this legislation is a common sense update to current requirements for a contractor who may be advertising on TV or radio. Thank you to the chairman and the ranking members for raising this bill. The essence of Section 1 of the bill allows for an occupational low voltage license holder to list their business website in lieu of their license number in their TV or radio advertisements. Likewise, Section 2 applies to home improvement contractors' registration numbers. This legislation does not make any changes to the current requirements for a contractor to list their license number on printed materials, invoices, advertisements, vans, etc. CASIA believes that this bill would increase transparency and benefit consumers viewing a TV ad or listening to a radio advertisement by providing an easily accessible internet location to verify licensing. Please note that CASIA definitely supports requirements that alarm companies and other occupational trades be licensed and that strong consumer protection measures be maintained or implemented to allow consumers to reach service providers. We feel that directing a customer to an easy-to-remember web address provided in a TV or radio advertisement is a practical approach to obtaining necessary disclosures and state licensing information, rather than having to see a group of license numbers on the bottom of a TV ad or have them rapidly dictated in a radio commercial. We thank the committee for your time and attention, and CASIA encourages passage of 8B 6613. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from committee members? Tim?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Pat, thank you for your testimony. So just to clarify, so you put your website up, and once you open your website on that front homepage, is your license listed for plain view?
It will be, yes, it will be, readily accessible. I have not done any websites, doing this yet, but that would be, our intent.
Well, I think that's, I think that would be the important component of it. If we are going to say you don't have it on this type of medium, that if it's going to be just the website up there, that consumer, I'm in a similar business, that and I know on my website that right on the top is my license number for Plainview, and I think that would have to be a requirement if this legislation is to move forward. So thank you for your testimony.
I would agree with you, and there will be other people giving testimony about this bill later this afternoon, and I will let them know that this is one of your main concerns, although I'm sure they're probably listening in. And that would be accomplished.
Thank you. Other questions from committee members? Representative Ackert, you're good? Tim? You're good?
I was just going to thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Pat.
We actually always appreciate your input on stuff like this. Between you and Senator Lopes, I think we've got a lot covered on this ground. Other questions from committee members? Okay. Thank you.
Next up on Zoom, we're gonna have Ron Tedison.
Ocean. Good afternoon, members of the committee. Please forgive me if I cough or if I have to clear my throat. After dodging COVID for 3 years, I tested positive last night. My name is Ron Tadeusian. I am the Chief Operating Officer for Alden Associates Limited Partnership. Alden is a privately held motor fuels and wholesale retailer. We are also a franchise operator for Wings Over and Moe's Southwest Grills. Our office is in East Hartford. Approximately 300 of our employees live in Connecticut. I started with Alden in 1983. I left the company in 2007, and I returned in 2011. I am testifying in opposition of HB 6614, and that concerning debit cards and cash discounts for gasoline. Alden has 18 sites that sell motor fuels in Connecticut. Our sites are branded Mobil, Shell, Sunoco, and we have 2 unbranded stations under our proprietary brand Sabre. We pay processing fees on both credit and debit cards at these sites. The processing fees vary by processing companies, but we are charged the fee for every debit card transaction. The processing companies charge a per transaction fee along with a percentage of sale, but ultimately we pay them about 2.4% on every debit transaction. 2.4% may not seem like much, but it's a substantial amount when we are making a few cents per gallon. Requiring us to extend discounts to debit card purchasers of gas would put an undue financial burden on us. HB 614, if HB 614 is enacted, we would need to do away with cash discounts, which harms the public that pays with cash. Please maintain the status quo regarding debit cards for motor fuels. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. I'm sorry, could you just clarify your organization for me? Who do you represent?
Alden Associates is a privately held company out of East Hartford, Connecticut. We are a motor fuels wholesaler and distributor. We are also a restaurant franchisee for Moe's Southwest Grills and Wings Over.
Representative Tigliano.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, sir. Sorry to hear you're not feeling well. So is the processing fee for a debit card the same as a credit card?
No, it's not. It varies. As a matter of fact, the processing companies charge particular fees that are not consistent. It's not as if credit card, all of the credit cards that are processed are charged the same fee. Visa, MasterCard, Visa, American Express, they charge us all different fees, and it's pretty much the same with the debit cards.
So is there a way, so there's 2 parts to a credit card transaction. There's the fee that the credit card processor charges for to use the credit card, and then there's the handle, which is usually just a like a swipe fee. It's either 20 cents, 15 cents every time you swipe. Is there a way for somebody to use a debit card in your business where there is no processing fee?
No, currently, no. I know that I was at attended a Mobil meeting where basically ExxonMobil is going to provide a different type of debit card that at that point that we will not be charged a fee, but right now that is not available to us.
Okay. I guess that's it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Other questions for committee members? Representative.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. You mentioned that this potentially would eliminate the discount for cash transactions. Are you familiar with any other gas station outside of the ones that you oversee that just advertise the price of gas as what it is for all forms of payment, cash, debit, and credit?
Yes, there are sites that the industry term is 2-tier pricing and 1-tier pricing. So 1 tier would be cash, credit, debit, or all the same price. Yes, I am familiar.
And you also mentioned, I believe you said that you don't charge, you don't understand another situation where there's a discount. So for example, if I go in to purchase a Kit Kat, because that's what I did this morning, and it was $2 and plus tax. I paid with my debit card, and I'm not aware, based on tax, the total price, that there was any fee charged for me using my debit card. Are you aware of any additional charges on a debit card for just transactions inside a mobile or gas station?
Yes, the retailer would be charged a processing fee on that transaction, yes.
And so it's, to my point is, it doesn't matter how much you're charging to this debit card or credit card. It just matters about gas for whatever reason, because I can go in and spend $60 on various things. Maybe I don't want to go to the grocery store. I buy a bunch of groceries there, and I can spend $60 and use my debit card. I'm not going to pay a single fee. But if I go outside and use my debit card to pump the gas, now I'm charged a 10 cents per gallon fee for gas. And I don't understand why there's an incentive to purchase in cash for gas, but the incentive doesn't exist for groceries inside the gas station.
Well, ultimately it's because there are razor thin margins on gasoline. So that 2.4% really affects that retailer. It affects us. While that Kit Kat, the purchase of that Kit Kat bar that you had, the retailer probably made more on that purchase of that Kit Kat bar than I would make with 5 gallons of gasoline.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Other questions from committee members? Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, we're gonna have in person Kevin Harris and online Sean Flaherty.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. And good afternoon, Senator Maroney, Representative D'Agostino, and all the members of the General Law Committee. My name is Sean Flaherty, and I am the Associate General Counsel for Regulatory Operations at ECO ATM LLC. And we appreciate this opportunity to submit testimony in support of SB 974, an act concerning automated kiosks for consumer electronics. And on behalf of myself and my colleagues at ECO ATM, we'd like to recognize and thank Senator Maroney for his continued commitment to this legislation. We very much appreciate his partnership in advancing legislation that enables new technology in the state of Connecticut. And just to give you some background, since 2009, ECO ATM has operated a network of automated kiosks that enable our customers to sell their used consumer electronics for cash or to responsibly recycle those devices when they're at the end of their life. And our network has grown to more than 5,800 active kiosk locations, and we operate in all 50 states. We're proud of our strong partnerships with major retail partners such as Walmart, Kroger, Albertsons, Westfield, and Dollar General, and how those partnerships have enabled us to collect over 37 million devices, keeping them out of landfills and often extending the functional lifespan of the mobile devices. SB 974 creates a new business category within the general statutes that clarifies how advanced technology such as ours can be leveraged to create more options for Connecticut consumers who are looking for a way to sell or responsibly recycle their used consumer electronics. ECO ATM supports SB 974 because of the clarity its language offers to businesses like ours that have been hesitant to invest in the Connecticut market due to existing ambiguity in the general statutes about how our services are defined and categorized. While we support this bill, we also appreciate and welcome the opportunity today to suggest the following minor modifications to SB 974. The first deals with access to records. So, ECO ATM, we take great pride in our longstanding responsiveness to information requests from state and local law enforcement agencies. SB 974 is currently written would require an automated kiosk operator to provide information immediately to the requesting agency in section 1C. We propose striking immediately from this section as for practical reasons, the process of providing the requested information may not always be immediate. Similarly, we propose striking immediately from section 1D as well, and for similar reasons. The other place where we'd like to suggest an amendment is regarding sale versus submission of a personal electronic device to an automated kiosk. As currently written, the requirements found in section 1D would be triggered when a consumer submits a device to an automated kiosk. We propose that the word submits is overly broad in this context, as one of the services such a kiosk like ours can provide as a real-time price offer to the customer based on the type of device submitted and its condition. The consumer, upon receiving this real-time price offer, can then decide whether to proceed with the transaction or reclaim the device and walk away. Additionally, the automated kiosk will also accept older broken devices in line with EcoATM's ethos of keeping unwanted electronics out of landfills. Therefore, we propose that the word sells be substituted for submits in section 1D to more precisely carry out its intent. And then the third amendment we'd like to suggest is that sections 1F1 and 1F2 of the draft bill clearly establish that an automated kiosk for consumer electronics is neither a junkyard nor a recycling facility nor a recycling center, and that a person who operates an automated kiosk for consumer electronics is not a junk dealer nor a pawnbroker nor a secondhand dealer. So as stated earlier, we greatly appreciate the clarity SB 974 provides to businesses like our own, who heretofore have been challenged by the ambiguity in the general statutes around how our business would be defined and categorized. And we think that, sections currently as drafted, sections 2 through 4 of SB 974 propose to amend the other sections of general statutes governing junk dealers and junkyards and pawnbrokers and secondhand dealers and recycling facilities by simply excluding automated kiosks for consumer electronics and those who operate them from the definition of those 6 entities. But we think that's already been addressed. And so we propose that sections 2 through 4 unnecessarily duplicative of sections 1F1 and 2, and that beyond the administrative cross-referencing burden they create, they may give rise to an unusual, perhaps untenable circumstance in which businesses must be explicitly carved out of every other possibly applicable section of the general statutes. So therefore, we recommend that sections 2 through 4 of SB 974 be deleted. We thank you for your time, and we are happy to answer any questions that you may have. We also like dogs.
And good afternoon. Senator
Thank you
Mulroney.
very much. We are glad to know that you also like dogs. I do have a question. I did receive an article, I believe it's several years old, but about I believe it was in Nevada, where some people were using your kiosks to sell stolen phones. And there was the concern of that. I believe that some of the language addresses that in here in terms of the information. And actually, at the end of the article, it says you had provided information to help catch those people who had sold the stolen phones. But can you tell us about any safeguards we obviously don't want to create a new market for stolen cell phones. So thank you.
Senator Mulroney, good afternoon. I'm Kevin Harris. I'm our Chief Legal Officer. And our thought was maybe I could answer some of the questions here live as well for the committee. So absolutely, it's very important that anybody that's buying used goods recognizes that they've got to have security features in place to deter bad actors from trying to sell stolen goods to them. So happy to augment the record with a very fulsome answer that gives you a complete listing of all the safety and security features. But just to touch on a few, for instance, every seller, we're going to take that seller's identification card, and in real time, we do an identity verification where images from the kiosk are being transmitted to a live agent who's verifying the identity of that seller against the identification card that they've presented. And that's what this bill would require. And then that record can is going to be transmitted to law enforcement officials in any way that they desire to have it transmitted to them. And then we're going to retain that record for up to 3 years as the bill lays out. That's just one of the many security features that this bill would require.
Thank you. And then and I understand why you would want to say to provide the information immediately. Do you have a suggestion on a time frame? Respond to request within 10 days. What is a reasonable 5 days, 10 days? I don't know.
That's right. Usually 5 or 10 working days is a very reasonable amount of time to provide that information. Quite frankly, the information is usually going to be provided much faster than that. But again, immediate is just such a term that we believe it should just be stricken. And we think the statute stands on its face as drafted if we just remove the phrase immediate.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Are there any further questions? Representative Acker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your testimony. So just following up, because this is something very new to me, these kiosks. What is acceptable in these kiosks? Is it, specifically laid out right in the kiosk? What is that you can bring to that kiosk?
It is. And Representative, what we accept are primarily cell phones, smartphones. Now, we do also in some models of our kiosks accept tablets and MP3 players like an iPod. Now, the industry, our kiosk has gotten away from accepting tablets because, as you're probably familiar, the size of tablets has grown so fast that what we've done is we've limited our machines to just cell phones. Having said that, you'll go into some Walmarts across the country we're at, and we will take a tablet, an iPad, for instance.
So the kiosks are I don't manned or personed and or just you put in your phone and it somehow gives you a value and says this is the value. How does that work?
Sure. The way
For
it
you, Mr.
works,
Chairman.
Representative, is it's taking technology and trying to do something. The analogy I would use is a few years ago when you went to the airport, you probably dropped your luggage off with a human attendant. Now, when you drop that luggage off, you drop it off at the kiosk. Very similar. What we've got is proprietary technology that takes a device, a cell phone. It's about a 6-minute transaction. When you put that cell phone into this kiosk, the kiosk is going to be able to identify, grade that device to give the consumer the right price. And then it consummates the transaction, takes the device from the seller and gives them cash or pays them PayPal, Venmo, whatever payment method they may want.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Pizzuto.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question. I'm pretty old. You take 8-track players and cassettes, but when someone drops off a cell phone, does that data get wiped or are you expected to have that clean? Because there could be a lot of sensitive data in there.
Yeah, absolutely. Data is absolutely critical to everybody in this industry, particularly our company. So I'll tell you, 37 million devices bought, 37 million devices wiped. So we ask consumers to wipe it before they sell the device. We think it's in everyone's best interest for consumers to take some activity and take control of their own data as best they can. So we'll offer instructions for a consumer on how to do that. These days, wiping your phone is really resetting, going through a factory reset. So we'll give instructions for consumers, particularly on our website or through a mobile app, how to do that and walk them through it. When they're at the kiosk and they sell us that device, downstream, we're going to make sure that that device gets wiped.
And one more question, Mr. Chairman. Do they reclaim any of the chemicals in it, like rhodium is in a catalytic converter?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's part of this. There's a huge industry out there for secondhand cell phones. As odd as it may seem to the committee today, it's a $5+ billion industry worldwide. Part of that is we are always going to try to reuse the device if possible. If it can't be reused, can it be repaired and then put back into use? At some point, devices as they reach the end of their life cycle are going to have to be recycled. And at that point, that is when we look, Representative, to take out and follow the focus materials. Take those materials that could be harmful to the environment and track them from cradle to grave.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Vice Chair Brown, did you have a question? No. Senator.
Do you currently have any of these in the state of Connecticut right now?
Yes, Senator. We have 8 right now across Walmarts and Dollar Generals in Hartford, Milford, and Groton. We have 8.
And how does this affect the growth or what's stopping you from getting more of them right now if you already have 7 of them throughout the Connecticut?
Senator, we should have 10 times that number. As I've mentioned earlier, if you go to your local Walmart, we're in 80% of the Walmarts across the country outside of Connecticut. And what's preventing our ability to operate in the state of Connecticut is ambiguity. In those 8 locations that we operate, we're actually licensed as a junk dealer. Not every municipality has a junk dealer statute. Not every chief of police is going to approve our operation as a junk dealer because of the nature of the operation. We could also be looked at as a recycling center, as a pawn shop, as a secondhand dealer, as a consignment shop. That's the purpose of this bill, to bring clarity. It creates a category that addresses this technology and allows us to then operate in the state of Connecticut at the level that we should for the consumers in Connecticut.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And for the committee's benefits and exempts them from these other, this whole panoply of laws that potentially could apply, because they've had local officials in one place say you need this license, a local official in another place say you need this license, and it's, as you just heard, preventing them from operating. So this creates a whole category for them. And which is the reason why we have the cross reference to the other statutes. We'll take a look at your suggestion, but if you guys could send us a red line of what you described today, and we'll take it under advisement. I think we're probably going to be more comfortable with some time frame for compliance rather than just striking immediate. And the good senator's suggestion of 5 to 10 business days probably makes sense to embed in statute. We'll take a look at the cross reference point that you made as well.
Thank you, Representative.
Other questions from committee members? I want to thank the committee for their questions on this. This is a bipartisan sort of pro-business development initiative by the committee. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next on Zoom, we have Kenneth Coombs.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I apologize. Thank you for your time and consideration today. My name is Ken Coombs. I'm writing to you today to voice my extreme opposition to the proposed legislation HB 6614. I'm an independent sales consultant for Sure Merchant Services. We provide processing services for numerous motor fuel retailers throughout New England. Prior to this, I was employed in the retail and wholesale petroleum industries for over 30 years. Currently, there is no need to impose this mandate upon retail motor fuel dealers through legislative fiat. Gasoline remains one of the most competitive retail markets available to consumers. Pricing is simple and transparent. Consumers have a vast array of choices where to purchase their fuel and at what price. While numerous retailers sell fuel under cash credit structures, there are still a large quantity that offer customers single-tier pricing. Customers are also provided the additional options of purchasing fuel for a lower price using loyalty and incentive programs. There are an abundance of options available to the consumer. For most Connecticut motor fuel retailers, credit card fees are one of their largest business expenses. We have customers that do close to 90% of their total sales on credit and debit transactions. In some cases, their fees even exceed payroll. Credit card fees differ by the type of card used and the amount of goods purchased. There are two types of debit card sales: signature-based debit and PIN-based debit. Both have relatively comparable fee structures. Debit card processing is not fee, and it also applies, fees apply to all merchandise, motor fuel, convenience store, etc., that the retailer offers. There are no exemptions from these fees. Additionally, motor fuel retailers have borne the added expense of security enhancements in order to provide their customers with the convenience of safety of using payment cards. Fuel dealers have made significant investments to comply with the new rigorous fraud prevention measures. Among these costs are PCI data, to network security and record keeping requirements, TDES, triple data encryption standard for all PIN entry devices, and also EMV, which are chip card readers, and those came at an average retrofit of $8,000 per dispenser. For these reasons, I request that HB 6614 not be enacted under any circumstances. Retailers deserve the flexibility to price their products to meet the needs of their markets. Simply stated, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Thank you, and I'm happy to address any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Representative Rochelle?
Thank you. I'm just curious, can you think of any other industry that charges credit card processing fees for purchasing goods at their establishment?
Yes, all business entities are hit with credit card processing fees. I think some of the larger people, obviously the Walmarts, due to their size, might have some leverage in getting better fees. But basically, if you're taking a credit card, you're paying some sort of fee, be it a gas station, convenience store, grocery store, liquor store, repair shop, you name it. There's a credit card, there's a fee.
I certainly understand that. What I'm asking is this differentiation in price. I'm curious if you've been to, say, a restaurant where they charge more with cards versus cash, or bought clothing in a store that had different pricing for cards versus cash. Or can give examples where you've been out. Liquor stores don't charge different pricing for cards and cash. We're all aware that this pricing is built in. It's just a matter of the different behaviors and how it's built in.
Correct. And I think in some of these instances, first of all, let's be clear that in Connecticut, we have to provide a discount for cash, as it is unlawful to upcharge for credit. So that's one consideration. I think typically why it's been as prevalent in gasoline is what Mr. Tadeusz pointed out earlier from Alden, is that the margins really are significantly less on gasoline. Some of these other retailers will typically work on higher gross margins. Obviously, convenience store merchandise can be up to 40% gross profit. In a scenario like that, where you're talking about 2.25% or 3%, obviously there's a little bit more. You have a little bit more leeway to absorb the fee. Hopefully, I've addressed your question.
Oops, there we go. Are there any further questions? Are you all set? Okay, thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you. Let's get down to business here. Get out of this.
Sure has to start.
Our next person online is going to be Christopher Carlson.
Good afternoon, Co-Chair Maroney, Co-Chair D'Agostino, and members of the committee. My name's Chris Carlson. I live down in Westbrook, and I work as the elder law attorney for Connecticut Legal Services Willimantic office. Connecticut Legal Services is a nonprofit law firm that provides representation to low-income individuals. I'm here today asking you to oppose House Bill 6612. As it's written, it inadvertently will make it easier for scammers to take advantage of elders because it conflicts with the self-protection standards put into place by the Federal Trade Commission. My job is to advocate for low-income senior citizens. One of the ways I do that is going out into the libraries, long-term care facilities, and senior centers to teach seniors how to defend themselves. I teach them online security. I teach them how to avoid falling victim to fraud and scams, because those skills are really the only line of defense that protects low-income senior citizens from losing their life savings. The FTC gives a three-step process an elder should take to avoid falling victim to a contractor scam. Elders are taught to avoid clicking on unknown advertisements. Elders are taught to independently verify the validity of a contractor's registration number before engaging in business with a contractor. And most importantly, elders are taught to ignore contractors who fail to display their registration number. Under current law, contractors are required to put their registration number on the face of an advertisement. An elder can take that number and go to a .gov website to ensure the person they're listening to and engaging with is a legitimate business. Section 1 and 2 of HB 6613 are flawed. Section 2 would require a senior citizen click on an unknown ad and be directed to an unknown website to attempt to verify the legitimacy of a contractor. That process will put elders at risk. It's going to require them to engage with potential scammers and go to their websites to get access to information. That's a risk. Scams online in Connecticut cost $74 million a year. 2,000 scams in Connecticut, reported scams in Connecticut, relate to fraudulent contractor scams. The burden of displaying a registration number on an online advertisement, on a truck, on a contract, on a piece of parchment is far less onerous than the multi-million-dollar burden put on the shoulders of senior citizens confronting in-person and online contractor scams. I welcome you to review my written testimony, and I'm asking you, help me protect senior citizens by opposing this legislation. They need these protections. The risk and the burden of becoming a victim of a fraud or an online scam is too great. And giving seniors those protections, a number on the face of the ad that they can independently verify, that they can follow the Federal Trade Commission standards to verify, is an important protection. I don't have a dog with me, but nevertheless, I thank you for your time and am more than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions from committee members? Representative Ackert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your testimony. Just going back, can you give me a little bit? So you say you represent typically, seniors. How do you reach out to them to describe a process that they should use to look up contractors and contractor numbers? Because I'd like you to expand your business to all consumers, by the way, to have them look this up. But I just, I asked the testifier earlier, that, if you do this, you better have on the website, right in the front page, your contractor's license number. And I don't think a lot of consumers know to actually look up somebody's number. What is the process that you discuss with your clients?
That's a great point. The process we use is simple. We counsel our clients to look for that number on the face of a truck, on the website, on the advertisement, and to go to the .gov website here in Connecticut to verify that number exists, it's tied to a legitimate firm, and that it's not expired. I don't have the website handy, but it is the state of Connecticut website that houses those documents that we guide them towards. And the primary concern, again, isn't that folks would be going to a legitimate business. There are a lot of advertisements online and a lot of scammers online as well. The concern is that there's nobody regulating these ads, and seniors would be clicking on advertisements and being redirected to an unknown website and start having to engage with unknown individuals. If the number's on the face of the ad, that's the first check. The senior doesn't have to click anything. They can look at that ad, take that number, take some of the preventative lessons we've taught them and that the FTC recommends seniors engage in to verify a firm before they start engaging the firm. Thanks for your question.
I thank you for that answer, and I appreciate that. I think it is, it's important for us to protect our consumers from scammers, and I appreciate your comments and your enlightenment on an issue that I didn't think was prevalent, being a good business owner. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I'd be curious as to Representative Ackert, you use this sort of a half question to you and half to the proponent here or the testifier. I mean, when you've got a contractor or a large entity that maybe has, a dozen of these, though, I think the impetus for the bill was you hit a link for a website on an ad, which you're going to access the ad, whether the license number is there or a website link is there, you're accessing the ad probably online anyway, or for print, whatever. And you can go to the link and it's going to list all those numbers. You may have more than one. Smaller ones may have one, but others may have more than one. And so the idea was just to simplify that process. I mean, I guess the testimony I'm hearing, I get it, but it's not confined to elderly. I mean, anybody could be taking advantage of that. And at the end of the day, it's on the consumer to take the number that it gets, either directly from the ad or through a link on the ad, and put that into a separate link that you have to go to on a .gov website and put that in and verify the contractor. So whether you're, I guess I'm struggling with what the risk is here. I mean, at the end of the day, we do rely on our consumers to verify that number. And all this is saying is you can either get that number by seeing it directly on the ad or hitting a link to get that number. But either way, you've got to take that number and go to a .gov website to verify it. That to me is the critical step. Either you do that or you don't. And if you don't do that, it seems to me you can be taken advantage of no matter how the ad is displayed. But I'm also curious as to your views on sort of how many of these numbers do contractors, do some of them have more than one?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. If you have a heating company and / plumbing company, you might have an S license, a P license, a HIC license, all on the side of the vehicle or on the card. Very common that they have, because they do, they're multifaceted. There's some that, have I don't want to bring up company names, but they have, 6 or 7 license types under their licensure. So maybe, under their business heading. So, but I can see the testifier's comments that you're directing them to a website. Now I get it if it's, a company that you see often, but I could see the concerns on both. And I didn't think about his concerns because I tell you the truth. Unfortunately, we have a good process that this committee has worked on, and having licensure on the side of a van. And I teach this in my classes that, people that have a construction truck, by the way, just so you know, that if you have a vehicle that vehicle is used in operation of a business, it's supposed to have the license number on the vehicle in plain sight, in some manner. They could put a placard in a windshield or something like that if that van pulls up. But if you go to any big box lumber store, I won't bring up a name of them just because one will get mad at me at the other one. And you look at the contractors' vehicles out there, if 10% actually have the licensure on their vehicles, I'd be shocked. I get that.
But so if you've got multiple numbers, I mean, what's easier for a consumer to look at, right? A fine print below that's got literally a dozen numbers listed, or go to this website to get our contractor license. And then you've got to, either way, you as a consumer have to take the affirmative step of verifying it if you choose to do so.
Well, and I like, when I saw this bill, I said, this makes great common sense. Just go to the website, but as not a professional scammer, that says, hey, this is the window company that I have here. Go to our website, log on to our website. Now they've captured your email, and I would think the over and over access of your email might be what is the concern. But I thought this was good until.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my question for the testifier. I mean, isn't the risk is there whether we do this or not? In other words, a scammer will have a website out there that says, go to, contact me for your contracting needs, and you're hitting a website link, or in this case, contact me for my license number, which is much more specific, obviously. So I guess I'm not seeing how this language escalates a risk that already exists.
You're making a great point. The risk is out there. It's a $74 million problem here in the state of Connecticut. The question is, do we want people to invite them in? The moment you click that ad, if you're on your phone, that website has your phone number. It has your metadata. If you're on your computer, it has your metadata from whatever browser you may be using, including a telephone number or an email. So the risk is once you click that ad, your information's out there and it allows scammers to start engaging you. There is no solution, one solution for the scammer issue in Connecticut. It's on the rise and it's real. But we can put roadblocks that protect the most vulnerable. I go to the senior centers, I counsel the elders. This is what you have to do to avoid contractor scams. Verify independently the legitimacy of the firm. If they need to start engaging the firm, that advertisement, that potential scammer, in order to verify the legitimacy of the firm, it's no longer independent verification. You're relying on the scammer to feed you information. By putting it on the face of the ad, the senior has time. They can slow down. They don't have to click and engage in order to determine validity. They get that time, and it's going to protect seniors who are getting scammed. And they're a vulnerable population. Once they lose money, they're on a fixed income. They can't get it back. So people will be scammed, absolutely. And this isn't a perfect solution, but it will put a speed block up to protect the most vulnerable who are being counseled as to their rights and the best way to protect their data online. Thanks for the questions.
Senator.
Thank you. And I appreciate you testifying before us today and taking the time, not only to do this, but the good work that you do to help protect our seniors. But my understanding of the proposed legislation is not to have anyone click on a link. It's just saying that when you're advertising, instead of saying your license number very quick, which no one's going to be able to hear, I could hear pretty well, and I can't hear it when they speed say it at the end of an advertisement on a radio, or again, as I'm driving by a truck on the highway. Most people will look online, and we're just asking to have your license number there. When you're making your advertisement, you could say, here's the name of the company and it's thatcompany.com. And they're not going to click on the license number to verify this. You're going to go to the website, which when you go to a website, you're not collecting data. There's metadata. It could say who went there, but you're not capturing information like sending someone a link, having them click on it. And at that point, there's some exposure and vulnerability. But going to a regular.com website, they're going to be able to see the number, take the information that you provided and the steps you've provided to the seniors, go to the .gov website and put in the license number, and it will verify that they are a legitimate contractor licensed with the state of Connecticut. And then they could engage with the website or via the phone number or whatever other way. We're not trying to make them have to click on a link to engage with a contractor. We're just saying, as long as your license number is on the main advertisement of your website, or it doesn't have to be on every single piece of advertisement you do. That's what this legislation was intended to do. Just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you, Senator Ciccarella. I just take a very pessimistic reading of Section 2. It has language that when I read it, it indicates that the senior would have to engage that advertisement in order to get redirected to the website that you're talking about. I want to avoid seniors having to engage advertisements because there are a lot out there, and that's how the door gets open to scams online, unfortunately.
And I'll take a look at that language. I don't think that's the intended language or purpose of this legislation, but I'll definitely take a look at that. Thank you for pointing that out.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Senator Ciccarella. Representative Pizzuto.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Counselor, would something like an intermediate step, like a QR code on the bottom of an ad, does that still give them data, or would they be able to, most people have a smartphone without typing in a web address?
It's my understanding that whenever an individual engages with a link, whether it be a QR code through a phone or through a traditional mouse click on a computer, data is shared. So if a senior is scanning a QR code to an unsavory player, that's information getting relayed to the unsavory player that can be used to inform how they're going to go about scamming their target, their mark. And so to answer your question, it's still a risk. I think the cleanest, most straightforward way we could protect Connecticut seniors in an efficient way is leave those numbers on the face of the advertisement. The burden of the $74 million in scams each year far far surpasses any cost of putting text in the bottom corner of an ad online.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Okay, hearing none. Thank you very much for your testimony, Mr. Carlson.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
All right, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Up next online, we have Robert Rossman.
Hello. Thank you, committee, for allowing to have me speak today in favor of HS 6613. I am the president of United Alarm Security Systems in Brookfield, Connecticut. I employ approximately 82 people here in Brookfield, and we install security systems. We do advertising, and I do think that several of the things that were just mentioned may need to be clarified just a little bit. The license number that is required to be put on our trucks, our cards, our letterhead, I believe that should all stay in place. Nobody should be allowed to be in business and not have a licensed contractor working for them and not have to display that on their contracts and other written material. I believe this addresses the modern day problem of TV and radio advertising. It's almost akin to the side effects that a drug company has to run at the bottom of their ad, mostly in about 30 times speed, for somebody to try to understand that if you take this drug, there might be 60 different side effects. Not many people are going to be able to glean a contractor's license off of that radio ad. There might be a misunderstanding. The last person who testified was describing it as a business registration, and it really has nothing to do with that. In Connecticut, of course, we do follow all of the laws that are in place to become a business, but a security and alarm installation company does not actually have a license other than being either a C Corp, S Corp, or, like I said, a corporation. Myself, I am an L5 licensed contractor in the state of Connecticut. If I left United Alarm, my contracting license obviously would not stay at United Alarm. They would have to employ and go and get somebody else to become their licensed contractor. The licensed contractor is the person that is allowed to pull permits, supervise jobs, and there's a certain ratio that the state of Connecticut demands that if you have 6 L6 journeymen and 3 apprentices working, you need 1 L5, and so on. So the license law is in place to ensure that consumers in Connecticut are dealt with in a regulatory fashion, that if there is abuses or improperly installed systems, the L5 is the responsible party. This part of the advertising simply says, go to the website, and we have listed all of the L5s or contractors that are working for United Alarm. And it is a much cleaner way to do it. The bill was written, quite frankly, even before websites existed or the Internet of Things was even here. For instance, if I made a radio ad 4 years ago, I would not have included a license number in it, because it was simply to notify United Alarm, call 203-775-8788. And of course, we're trying to drive traffic into, United Alarm for people that are interested in buying security systems. That's basically what I think needs to be understood, that the contractor's license is just that, a contractor's license. Every security company in Connecticut is required to have at least 1 L5 contractor in their employ, and that license number has to be displayed on, like I said, all the paperwork and advertising. And by the way, it is on all of our trucks. It is on all of our, it's a law that's been in place for a long time. Lastly, I'd like to say that the security industry across America protects millions and millions of dogs, and we love dogs as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for protecting the dogs, Mr. Rossman. And are there any questions? Representative Vitigliano. Oh. Thank you for your testimony, sir.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you. Up next on Zoom, we have Raphael Podolsky.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Please proceed.
Thank you. My name is Raphael Podolsky. I'm a lawyer with the legal aid programs with Connecticut Legal Services, as is Mr. Carlson, but I am the housing and consumer advocate for all three of the major legal aid programs in Connecticut. I want to speak to two bills very briefly. The first one is the one you've been talking about, House Bill 6613, which we oppose, or at least in the present form. What it does is it actually repeals an existing protective requirement, which is the requirement that TV, radio, and electronic ads have to have the license number disclosed conspicuously on them. It's not like it prohibits anyone from putting that number on their website. If anything, one could argue that the law should be expanded to require that number be on the website as well as on other documents. But it just seems to me that from a protective perspective, you don't want to take away something that we've established that requires that a number be in a place where for some people it'll be more likely to be seen. And you have to remember that there's some people who are not even dealing with computers. I mean, that not everyone goes and looks on websites for things. So for example, if there's a number on TV, you may just write it down and you may make a phone call to an agency. So it just seems to me there's no reason to take it away. You keep what you've got. If you want to add some additional protection, that's good. But I wouldn't take it away. The second bill is House Bill 6614, which we support. And there's a lot of history behind this bill. So I'll say a few things about it. What it does is it restores a requirement that gas station customers who pay with debit cards pay the same price as cash. We have a general rule in our statutes that says credit card and debit card surcharges are illegal in Connecticut. What's happened is with the gas station industry, they've managed to argue something that is legal, which is a cash discount. I invite you to try to figure out what the difference is between a credit card surcharge and a cash discount. They're basically the same thing. As Representative Rochelle pointed out, other people don't do that. They don't try and claim at the grocery store that we're going to give you a cash discount. There's one price for everybody. If there are charges that are connected to the use of certain means of payment, they're part of the overhead of the business. Why would businesses even accept credit cards or accept debit cards if they thought every time that you used it, you were bringing their profit down below an acceptable amount? Well, the reason is because they can't have volume unless they take credit and debit. So that is how you lower your cash price, by volume. And so by doing that, by taking cash and credit, you're actually bringing everybody's price down, and you just have one price. Back in 2008, the legislature, having decided to give that gas stations could have this benefit they wanted, also decided that debit would be treated as cash. And I invite you to look at lines 82 to 84 of the existing bill, and you will see that they inserted something that said that inserted the phrase debit card in the section that says treating things as cash rather than as credit card. But the legislature was too subtle in doing it. By writing it that way, the Department of Consumer Protection misinterpreted it and has allowed debit cards to be treated as credit rather than as cash, even though there's no credit whatsoever that's extended. Yes, it is true that there are transaction fees, and they are normally lower for debit cards than for credit cards, but they're just a part of the ordinary business. And it is also true there are many gas stations that have one price. And all that this means is if it's part of the overhead, it's going to be part of the price of gasoline for everybody. So to me, this is a step in the right direction to go to following the more general rule that you don't have a separate price for a customer who's paying cash and a different price for a customer who's using credit. That is in fact the general rule, but there's this artificial distinction in our statutes between a surcharge and a cash discount. So I would urge you, I was really pleased to see this bill, and I would urge you to support the bill. Certainly it's a step in the right direction, and certainly is a fairer way of treating people who are paying with a debit card who are having to pull the money right out of their bank account. So that would be my hope, that you would approve this bill. I'm happy to answer questions on either of those bills that anybody wants to ask me. And I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak.
For
to
our
you.
new committee members who don't know you, this is a good introduction. You always come well informed and in a persuasive manner. Representative Osborne.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And oh, where'd he go?
He's there.
He's there.
Go ahead.
So it's nice to see you again. I met you last year during some advocacy calls that we were on together. And I'd actually point out that there are many small businesses that do offer a discount for cash. And some of those small businesses are some of the attorneys that you and I have both been on calls with together. They offer cash discount. Some actually still specifically pass along credit card and debit card fees. I'm wondering if you're aware of that there are actually several attorneys and other small businesses like that who offer cash discounts specifically because of the overhead costs that they can avoid.
I guess the simple answer is no, I'm not aware. I mean, it was interesting when a prior witness from the gasoline industry was asked that same question. He didn't know of any, but no. So if there are. I'm always interested in inquiring of people how they believe that anyone distinguishes a cash discount from a credit card surcharge. And at one point I did a little mini study. This was back 15 years ago, by going and looking at the price of gasoline and comparing it based on whether you pay with debit or credit. And the cash discount is, gas stations basically have a cash discount. Maybe lawyers have a sort of a de facto exemption from the general rule. But it seems to me that we want to promote the general rule rather than promoting the exceptions. And so I certainly don't endorse charging people different substantive prices based on whether you're paying cash or credit. Or debit. But again, here, the issue isn't cash or credit. The issue is, do you treat debit different from cash, which is a much narrower question. And it involves looking at this consumer issue from the point of view, not of the creditor, but from the point of view of the customer, the consumer, the person who's paying. For them, there is no difference. There may be some difference for the business, but there's no difference from the point of view of the customer, the client, in the case of an attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Tigliano.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, sir. I really just have one question. And I must say that I am a little agnostic on the whole question. I'm in the restaurant business. I'd love to be able to charge extra for credit card processing or not have any credit card processing at all. It is a gigantic expense. But fundamentally, taking the the debit, credit, cash, if a retailer, if a merchant has to pay a fee when you use your debit card, isn't it really a credit card?
I don't think so. I mean, maybe I'm not understanding that.
If you pay with cash, the merchant pays no fee whatsoever for that transaction. Nothing, no handle, no percentage of the sale they have to give to the credit card company. If you pay in cash, if you use a debit card, from what the other testifier, the previous testifier said, that they pay a fee. They pay their fee plus the handle, which is that built-in percent or cents. So isn't it basically a credit card? A debit and a credit card are essentially the same thing to a merchant.
They're both cards, and they both typically come with fees. My understanding is a credit card typically has a higher fee. So yes, they're both cards. A debit card is not, however, a credit card, because you're not borrowing any money. So I understand from the merchant's perspective, this is one reason why it makes a difference, whether you look at it from the consumer's perspective or the merchant's perspective. From the merchant's perspective, it costs them more. So there are merchants who will not accept credit. They have made a choice that they're willing to lose the business of people who do not want to pay cash or don't have the cash to pay cash. They're willing to lose that business because they don't want to absorb the extra fee. So be it. That's their choice as a merchant to do that. But that's not the same. I mean, if you're saying why shouldn't we always have the same rule for credit cards and debit cards? I would say, well, yeah, you shouldn't allow a cash discount on credit you shouldn't have a credit card surcharge either. But that's not the issue of this bill. The bill is about equal treatment of cash and debt and debit cards.
I actually think that that argument is legitimate. If you want to say we shouldn't distinguish between cash and credit cards, I really do. Let's have that discussion. But I think we should also have the same discussion that a debit card is really just another name as far as the merchant is concerned of a credit card. So they're paying a fee on the transaction. So
would it matter to you if systematically the fees were lower for debit cards? There should be a three-price structure under your theory, that the merchants should charge one price for cash, one price for debit, and one price for credit. And then you say, well, that's being fair because the merchant is not using the higher credit card fee as a way of making a little extra profit on a debit card transaction.
So
that would be the logic of what you're saying.
I understand what you're saying, but I'm only referencing my own experience with debit and credit cards. We pay the same fee as long as it has that logo on it, Visa, MasterCard. We actually don't even know if it's a debit or credit card. We just process it and we pay the same fee regardless of the type of card the customer is sending us or presenting us.
I guess all I would say to you is it's a matter of routine overhead, like many, many other things that are different for different businesses. And they work it out into what is a competitive price, and it's one price. They charge everybody the same price. You don't go into most businesses and they tell you your groceries cost this much, but the price of your groceries is 3% less if you're going to pay us with cash. They don't. And that's because somewhere out in the market, there's a recognition that that's not the right way to do business as a general rule. It is really primarily, I believe, and I will even, notwithstanding what Representative Osborne said, primarily this is about gas stations. Maybe not exclusively.
I don't want you to think I don't agree with you or I just really, I think as a floor, we should just establish, I was trying to establish with you, sir, that a debit and credit are the same thing. So I think we could all, as a committee, have the discussion on whether or not there should be cash discounts or whatever. But I don't think it's fair to call a debit card the same as cash. So that was pretty much it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. From a merchant perspective, yes, thank you.
Other questions from committee members? Vice Chair Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Podolsky, we know that the amount of consumers who pay for gas with cash is roughly about a little less than a third. Those that pay with debit cards, probably an additional third. So would you agree with the argument that those consumers that are paying with cash are really subsidizing those customers who are paying with debit? And so the rationale that they'd have to eliminate this cash discount just doesn't stand. Would you agree with that?
I don't think so. If I'm understanding what you're saying, there's a cross subsidization in between. Let's just, if we lump, even if I don't know if you want to lump debit and credit cards together or anything that's not cash, if you want to put it that way, that's not direct cash from the merchant's point of view. There's a cross subsidization because typically the price of what they sell things at is related to the amount of volume they have. And that the more volume, because of how much they're making per transaction, the more volume they have, the lower you can price something. So that volume becomes very important. So the question becomes, how do you maximize volume? And if you maximize volume by essentially selling to more people who walk in the door, whether it's gasoline or something else, then you're going to be able to have a lower cash price. And that's because the people who are paying, if you didn't take those customers and that are paying with a card as part of your volume, you're going to have to charge a higher cash price to make up for the revenue that you're otherwise losing. And that's the sense of a cross subsidization, that yes, if you go to a uniform price, the cash customer is presumably paying a little bit more, the card customer is paying a little bit less, but they're each subsidizing in a different way. And so I think on examination, the argument that cash customers are subsidizing card customers if you have a single price, I just don't think that's true. And I don't think it holds up to analysis. I mean, I know people think that, and they say it all the time, but I don't think it's actually true. And it's interesting because you had I looked at the written testimony of some of the witnesses, and one of them says 60% of my business is debit card. And they, I don't know if they say or they imply they wouldn't be able to stay in business if they would have to raise their price if they had to have one price. Well, that says, I don't know, you take whatever you want out of that about who's subsidizing, which customers are subsidizing which other customers, but clearly it's not lowering their profit to a point where they don't want the business. It's easy enough to put up a sign that says no, you can cash only, and there are places that do that, but most businesses don't choose that option because they would not want. They know it would be a tremendous loss in business, in volume, and then they're going to have to raise the price for their cash customers. So I don't know how to explain that any other way in terms of cross subsidization. But so I think my answer to your question is no.
Great, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Rafi. I think we're all set. MJ.
Up next in person, we have Joanne Basil.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. Let's talk about dogs. And I am here to talk about dogs. I wish it were a happier topic on dogs. My name is Joanne Basile. I'm the Executive Director of Connecticut Votes for Animals. We are a grassroots animal advocacy organization that advocates for changes in laws protecting animals with the Connecticut General Assembly. We have supporters in every district of the General Assembly. Greyhound racing and its attendant live lure baiting techniques is a cruel, grossly inhumane form of gambling. Connecticut was late getting started in racing dogs, and after a relatively short period, the financial decline of the business forced Connecticut to close its track in 2005. According to Grade 2K, Greyhound racing is illegal in 42 states, with Oregon joining just last year. Overall, the industry suffered huge financial losses and continues to decline, a reflection of the public's clear disdain for the abusive tactics associated with racing. Connecticut residents expressed a collective sigh of relief when the state closed its racing tracks. I believe I speak for many who would be shocked to learn that there's a technical loophole that exists in which live greyhound racing could resume without scrutiny. HB 6615 is an opportunity to do the right thing for Connecticut residents. Live greyhound racing ended in 2005. Passage of 6615 will formally close the statutory book on live greyhound racing and ensure that the promise to Connecticut people is kept. On behalf of all of our supporters at Connecticut Votes for Animals, I urge the committee to favorably pass 6615. I would also draw your attention to submitted testimony from Virginia Maxwell, who was a professor at the University of New Haven in forensic sciences, and her testimony with respect to the inhumane conditions under which greyhounds have been kept over the years. She is also a member of the board of Connecticut Votes for Animals. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from committee members? Thank you so much. Appreciate you hanging around.
Up next, we have Olivia Rinks. Okay, then we'll go to Casey Henderson, who is online.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can. Go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you. Chairman D'Agostino and Maroney and distinguished members of the committee, thank you for this opportunity to speak with you today in support of House Bill 6613. My name is Casey Henderson, and I am in-house counsel with ADT Security Services. ADT is a member of CASIA, employing over 150 employees at multiple locations throughout Connecticut. With almost 150 years of industry experience, ADT is the leading provider of electronic security services in the United States. We are quite literally in the consumer protection business. As a result, we are constantly innovating and striving for ways to provide better service and protection to our consumers as well as potential consumers. We believe that this bill allows for the common sense step of enhancing consumer protection in this industry, and I would like to thank you for the opportunity to offer our strong support for House Bill 6613. Laws of this nature, as originally drafted, were typically passed before the creation of the internet and require companies like ADT to include state license and/or registration numbers on advertisements. Practically, what this means is that for companies that operate in multiple states or nationwide, they must either craft a separate advertisement for each state or create one television or radio ad that includes license numbers and any other required information for approximately 20 different states, which are then read through at the end of a radio spot or included at the end of a television commercial. While a good idea in concept, this likely provides little to no usable information for consumers trying to locate license information on an electronic billboard as they drive by at 60 miles per hour, or to capture it as it scrolls past them quickly in a commercial. ADT stands behind our name and our work and supports requirements that alarm companies be licensed in the state, as well as provisions that allow consumers to research service providers and companies. To be clear, we are not asking for an exemption to providing this important information. Rather, we believe that it would be far more consumer friendly to allow contractors to refer customers to an easy to remember web address in advertisements, which then includes all state license information. Ultimately, we believe this will empower consumers by providing useful information without creating an additional burden for the Department of Consumer Protection. We've heard some concerns today regarding how this will impact the elderly, which I'd like to address. In the 2023 Tech Trends survey published by AARP in January of 2023, the data shows that tech ownership and use are high among older Americans. The survey finds that 86% own a smartphone, 70% have a smart TV, 59% use a tablet, 31% have a home assistant, 28% own a wearable device, and 24% have a smart home tech device. Additionally, with the law written as is, chances are very high that if a person is actually able to remember the license number and write it down correctly after seeing it, in a 30-second TV ad, that person is more than likely going to go to Google to find the state's license lookup tool online to verify the license. And the Department of Consumer Protection doesn't currently list a phone number on its website that discusses verification of licenses. States as diverse as Arizona, California, Florida, Alaska, and most recently, New York and New Jersey have updated their laws to allow similar language. As a tech-forward state, we believe it makes sense for Connecticut to join others in the region and to take this step towards modernization. Thank you for your time and consideration today. I'm happy to answer any additional questions you might have.
Thank you. Questions from committee members? Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your testimony. You bring to light, a national company, and you had to put every license on the front of their all 50 states that you serve. That'd be quite interesting to see that screen that you just brought up. So I do appreciate that view. And just a point, we have what they call e-license online .ct.gov is what the one that the gentleman mentioned. Just to let you know, it's very cumbersome. So hopefully I'll talk to the DCP about that. I'm just looking at it now, but I appreciate your thing. The one testifier had mentioned scams. What are your thoughts on that potential that, not your business, obviously, a very, good company, but, others that may, and I know it's not, but just, somebody directing somebody to a website that, as a local TV ad type of thing. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I have two thoughts, and I appreciate that question because I think it's a great point. My first thought on it is that this is actually designed to empower consumers to help prevent against any scams. So as it is right now, I think it's more likely that a consumer could get scammed in a different way because they aren't even able to remember the license or the registration number that they see pop up across the screen or, read very quickly at the end of a radio spot. So I think that's the first thing, is that this is meant to empower the consumer and give them an option that's actually better for them to be able to verify what is actually going on with that company. The second is that, the purpose of this is not to have the consumer or direct the consumer to click on any type of link. It is to provide them an easy to remember web address so that they can go to the site independently and do the verification that they need to do on their own. And you do see the cat in the background, but I'm also dog friendly as well.
It's an animal day here in the Capitol. So, and just a follow up, Mr. Chairman, if I were to go to your company's website now, and in my state, would I be able to easily locate your license number?
Yes, the intent is that it be readily accessible. So our link to licenses is on our homepage, and we don't think that it should be, any more clicks than other than on the homepage.
Thank you for your testimony. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So just to piggyback on Representative Ackert's question. So like with a company like ADT, or Tim, you and I were talking about how contractors may have multiple licenses. So if you've got a radio ad, like how many seconds of the ad at the end are devoted to, CR license number XYZ 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. I mean, how many? It all has to be just expelled at the end of the ad, right? I mean, in quick language, I'm just not sure how consumer friendly that is. Am I understanding this correctly? Like when you do a radio ad, how many licenses do you have to sort of regurgitate at the end?
That's correct. I mean, and it would have to depend. We're more limited on radio spots being regional because you have to take into consideration the amount of time that it's going to take to list all of the licenses. I think we provided an example of a TV commercial though, and you can see that, during the whole commercial, all of the numbers are running through for each state that we're advertising in, and it's very cumbersome and very difficult to read and glean any useful information from it.
Thank you. Other questions from committee members? Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
By the way, just for committee members, what you heard when the Greyhound was getting up is known among the owners of Greyhounds as the Greyhound scream of death. And when we first, the GSOD, when we first heard it as owners, we thought, my God, our dog is dying. What is happening? They are notorious crybabies. Like a pebble in their foot leads to that kind of scream, and then you realize the dog is fine. They're notorious drama queens. So that's all that was. The Greyhound scream of death.
And our final person, we have Chris Herb.
Okay, I'm going to stick with the theme. So although I am human, I've asked a number of women out over the years, and I've always responded that I look like a dog. So So my name is Chris Herb. I'm the president of the Connecticut Energy Marketers Association. I probably just lost my job. We represent motor fuels distributors and retailers in Connecticut. Our members own, operate, and distribute gasoline to over 1,000 locations throughout the state. So we are, just to point out, the conversation at this point has been interesting, and I want to depart from my testimony and address some of the questions that came up. But first of all, I want to start by saying that most legislators don't know this, that Connecticut is a divorcement state. Refiners are prohibited by law since 1979 from owning and operating gas stations. So when you go and do business at your local Shell or BP or your Exxon station, you are doing it with likely one of our members. So there's only a few states in the country that have that law. So I just wanted to kind of set straight that you're talking about local family-owned businesses when we have this discussion. The first thing is that debit card fees, which I think is well established, are similar. And I think Representative Vitigliano's point is well taken. From a retailer perspective, there is very little distinction between the two, whether it's a credit card or a debit card. In 2008, I sat with the chairman of the General Law Committee when refiners prohibited family-owned businesses from offering cash discounts. Many other states at that time had cash discounts, and we said, why can't we do this in Connecticut? It was the first time gasoline prices reached $3 a gallon. And we said, we need to find, since we cannot control the worldwide price of gasoline, we need to find a way to bring lower prices to consumers in Connecticut. That solution that was crafted with, I believe it was Representative Shapiro and Senator Calipetro at the time, were to prohibit in our contracts us not being able to offer those cash discounts. So that's what came to market. If I could sum up the entire conversation, if we, number one, and I know that's not what the intention of the bill was, but that's where the discussion started to go, is if we take away the ability to give cash discounts, the price of gasoline will go up. There are two prices, the regular price of gasoline, and then there's the ability for us to give a discount so we could avoid the three different charges that are put into a debit card transaction. If you take that away, they will price to their highest costs. Cash discounts bring lower prices. They are popular amongst consumers because they reduce the price of gasoline. They do not increase them. There is a prohibition on surcharges. I can't walk in and pay a higher cost. Now, one of the conversation dealt with a lot, why don't other retailers do this? Well, there are very few retailers that you do business with that have a penny's margin on their product. They typically have margins that are much larger. Therefore, there's room built in to absorb debit and credit card fees. When you're only making pennies per gallon, you want to encourage the avoidance of those fees through the use of cash. That's why the regular price tends to be higher. And that's why we believe that if you took away cash discounts, that's where it would go. Now, the bill just says that we need to treat debit the same as cash. But as almost everyone who commented here today has acknowledged, you understand that debit cards are not the same as cash. They have that Visa or MasterCard logo on them. They have to go through, the bank gets a piece of that transaction. The credit card processor gets a piece of that transaction. And then there's a third layer that also gets a piece of it. So our industry in 2008, working with the General Assembly, found a way to lower gas prices. If this bill passes, I suspect, and according to our members, most of them who are currently offering cash discounts would cease doing so, so that they were not exposed to the fees that are laid into those debit card transactions. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Someone who's testified before hits it right at the 3-minute mark, obviously, Chris.
And before this committee.
Yes, I know you've been here. Questions from committee members? Senator.
More just a quick comment. Just wanted to thank you for testifying and kind of clearing that up. Because I think we were trying to understand some of the concerns on both sides, and you made it very clear. It's just simply that there is not enough profit margin in the gasoline that 1 or 2% will make it non-profitable. That's why almost every gas station has some other form of income, whether it's a garage, a car wash, or those convenience stores. So thank you for kind of clarifying it for us and anyone that may be watching. It was very helpful. Thank you.
A dollar cup of coffee may have 85 cents of margin, and in a gallon of gasoline might have a few pennies.
I think I mean, I guess we need to hear some from economics. I understand what you're saying about the possible risk is that retailers would eliminate the cash price. I guess the part that I don't necessarily agree with is that they would all default to the higher price. It would take, I think, a kind of remarkable and probably illegal collusion among everybody to agree on that price and only charge that price. As soon as the guy down the street says, okay, I'm going to charge less, your members have a decision to make to compete, right? Everybody takes debit, it's all the same price. This guy's going 10 cents less, I'm going down the street. So now your guys got a decision to make. I got to meet that or not. And that's an internal decision about how you absorb those costs and where you might pass them on elsewhere in your overall scheme of your economics of your operation, right? But just to be clear, if everybody is sitting there saying, everybody agrees, we're not going to go below this price, right? That's a whole different set of problems that the Attorney General is interested in.
No, absolutely. I think you described that accurately. That there's 1,000 fierce competitors out there trying to steal gallons from each other, and they do it in all sorts of creative ways, whether that's offering cash discounts, something unique about a loyalty program, something in a convenience store or at the shop that might be where that gas station is. But what I'm saying is they would go up to their highest price. Since every debit card and every credit card has a different fee structure, whether you're using your fancy Capital One Disney World card that has that we're paying for you to earn points to go to Disney World. So what retailers will do, and what they've told us, is that they will look at what is my maximum exposure for these transactions, and they will gravitate up. And that's why I'm saying they might not go to the absolute maximum price, because competition doesn't always let you do that, but they will eliminate the discounts that consumers are receiving today where cash discounts are offered. And I don't think that you want to be in the position of passing legislation that takes away one of the few tools. We have no control over what's happening in the Ukraine and the impact that has in Hamden when people fill up. But if we take this away, we take away the one thing that we can do that does provide lower prices.
Questions from committee members? Kara.
Thank you. So I don't want to speak for the proponent of the bill, but I'm assuming that the intent is to protect consumers and bring costs down. And we've heard some conflicting testimony today regarding whether or not it will bring bring costs up or down. Do you have any empirical data, any studies that were done on this beyond anecdotals?
Yeah, I do not. I will tell you that Connecticut Legal Services said that they did a study. I've never seen that submitted before the legislature, so I don't think that exists. I can tell you that this law has been scrutinized by the Department of Consumer Protection a few times over the years, and it has survived their scrutiny. We've had a couple of aggressive attorney generals who've also looked at it, and has not resulted in any prosecution or violation of law.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So one of the prior speakers who gave testimony on this made the argument that no other retailers, no other service providers gives a cash discount, and therefore gasoline shouldn't be able to either. But I think the fact that we have this, I guess this is more of a comment, the fact that we have a bill that is specifying gasoline for different treatment kind of proves that we do have other entities and service providers that are providing cash discounts. And when I look at a cash discount, I think of it actually as a form of consumer protection, because it's something that I or another service provider can provide as a benefit to bring down the cost of the fees that we do have to charge. So my billable rate, those credit card fees are baked in, and then only up to $10,000, of course, because that's the money laundering fees, right? Or the money laundering level, up to $10,000, I can offer a cash discount so that the impact of the fees that my clients are experiencing can be lessened a little bit. And if I don't have to experience that cost, why should they have to experience that cost? So I really do view it as a consumer protection. I gather that's what your argument is as well.
It is. And I would also say that if a consumer wants to drive by a gas station that's offering a cash discount at a lower price to pay a higher price somewhere else because he thinks the cash discount is pushing the price of gasoline up, they are free to do that. But I don't think that that's what's happening. I think the cash discounts are bringing lower prices to the street where they're being offered. So again, back to this competition argument, if you want to drive by a lower price cash discount station to pay more somewhere else because you're not being treated fair, you may do so. I don't. I always take the lower price.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Osborne. Other questions from committee members? All right. Thank you, Chris. Thank you all.
Thanks.
Anyone else, MJ, who's signed up late or? Anyone else here who would like to testify who's not signed up on any of the topics today? All right, if not, we'll close the public hearing. Thank you all for attending and putting up with the dogs today. General, I was gonna, committee members, just keep in mind, we'll probably have public hearings next week, Tuesday and Thursday, with a goal toward finishing up by the end of the month and then start JFing bills the first week of March.